بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. So we were at where were we? Remind me specifically on Dua Iftitah. Let me pull it up here for us. We finished the fourth paragraph, right? We're about to start the fifth paragraph now. Is that right, Hajjatala?
Yeah, that's right. Is my mic working? Yeah, it is.
Yes, it's working. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, okay, so here we go. So we got to a point where وَهُوَ حَيٌّ لَا يَمُوتُ بِيَدِهِ الْخَيْرُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And he is all living, right? Meaning unlimited, doesn't, wasn't created, and so therefore he doesn't have a beginning or an end. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And he is capable of all things. Then the Imam Salamullah alayhi, he starts with Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin abdika wa rasulika wa aminika. Notice here the salawat is not like it was before, right? It's almost as though now the salawat has been elevated to another level. Now we went from praising Allah, and hamd to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This whole theological and theistic dissertation that the Imam has taken us through. And now he moves us and transitions us to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now even the salawat is extended. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin, right? And now he starts to describe him. Abdika. He's your slave. So if he's the exemplar on this earth, he's the representative, and he's his slave, then what am I? What is my goal? If I think that being free is all about doing what I want, just be you, right? Hash, be me. I'm being me. Hash, just be you, right? What is you? What am I? Essentially, if the Prophet is the slave of Allah, and my goal is to show Allah gratitude for everything through all of my faculties, everything He has afforded me. And he, Prophet Muhammad, is the ultimate exemplar. وَلَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. That in the Messenger of Allah, you have a great exemplar. أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those of the command, meaning the Imams. Then that means if they were the best of worshippers, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the chapter of Al-Anbiya, verse 73, chapter 21, verse 73, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً, and we made them imams by our command. وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, that they guide by our command. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ, and we revealed unto them فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ, how to do good, وَإِقَامُ الصَّلَاةِ, how to pray properly, وَإِيتَاءَ الزَّكَاةِ, how to give charity. That they and charity are one. In all states, they're charitable. Even in prayer, they don't lose sight of charity. They don't lose sight of the downtrodden. They don't lose sight of the destitute. They don't lose sight of the impoverished, like Amir al-Mu'mineen, who in his prayers, he gave charity. These are the mu'mineen, these are the abideen, right? Where he says, then in the chapter of Anbiya, chapter 21, verse 73, in this verse, he says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ, and we revealed unto them فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ, how to do good deeds, وَإِقَامُ الصَّلَاةِ, how to pray properly, وَإِيتَاءَ الزَّكَاةِ, how to give charity and when to give charity, right? وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدِينَ, and to us they were the best of worshippers, right? Now here's the difference between abid and abd, okay? Abid is in the form fa'il, وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدِينَ in the plural, okay? Comes from the word abid, add the waw noon or ya noon, depending on where it is in the sentence, its position in the sentence. Now you've turned the singular into a plural, referring to all of these imams. وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدِينَ. Abidin, full stop, which means it's in the absolute form. Okay? So absolutely they are the best of worshippers, because I gave them by my command and revealed unto them how to guide humanity. which means that that's guidance in the absolute form. That's worship and salah and belief and doing good deeds and giving charity in its absolute form, right? To be connected with Allah absolutely, right? And always in a state of ibadah. وَكَانْ لَنَا عَابِدِينَ. So abid comes from abadah, okay? That's the root word. Fa'il, we said, the extra letter is the alif. We're going to take it back to its 3-letter roots, like we said yesterday. So now abid becomes abada. Abada is in the past tense. It means he worshipped in the past. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's shelf that. Abada and abid. Abid, we said, is in the form of fa'il or ja'il, which means always doing, which means they're always in the state of worshiping Allah. In the verse of Al-Dhariyat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Right? Everybody's heard this verse. We hear it all the time on the minbar, right? When we go to and listen to lectures. Surely I did not create jinn and men except that they may worship, right? إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that all of them worship. Not إِلَّا لِيَكُونُوا عَابِدِينَ, إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, meaning now, this is present, future tense, ya'bud. Let's take out the waw noon. Let's take it down to its form. With the ya at the beginning, it becomes ya'bud, which means a singular who is worshipping now in the present, future form, fi'l mudari, now and in the future. Un, with the waw noon, now it becomes plural. All of the jinn and men have to worship now and in the future. As long as they exist, they're worshiping. Okay? Now, if they're continuously worshiping, always, then they gain a status or a label of abid, fa'il, because they're doing it. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى عفوا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِصَلَوَاتِهِمْ أو عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. Allah says in the chapter of Al-Mu'minun. Those are the ones who in their prayers, they maintain their prayers, right? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. In the form فَاعِلُونَ. Those are the ones who always are aware of Allah's presence, always, continuously, right? They're always aware of Allah's existence. They're conscious of His presence continuously. Remember we said we're going to live in the awe of Allah. I'm going to feel Allah's awesomeness, right? I'm going to know that I'm in the presence of Allah. That's what I'm working on this month of Ramadan, right? And this is exactly what the chapter of Al-Mu'minun is telling me. You have to be in a state of khushu' always. And as long as you maintain that khushu' in your prayer, then you can transfer that off of the prayer rug, okay? That's what we have to practice doing. And so you become fa'il, khashi', right? Always doing, right? Your goal is to get to abid. For you to be abid, you have to be khashi'. For you to be always in a state of worshipping Allah, fa'il, abid, you always have to be in a state of khushu', khashi', always knowing you're in the presence of Allah. And primarily starting with salah. After he says that in the chapter of Al-Mu'minun, I want to fast forward a little in the chapter of Al-Mu'minun. Why? Because I want to show you how important this form, this morphological form of the word is. If we go to the chapter of Al-Mu'minun, let me pull it up. في صلاتهم خاشعون, right? So he says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Those are the ones who refrain from vain talk or vain actions. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. You see? And those are the ones who, in giving charity and alms, they're always fa'ilun. What did I tell you about the importance of fa'il? Which means they're always giving charity. Okay. Now this fa'il, in order for me to be known as a charitable person, not to others, but to Allah, Allah says you always have to be in a state of being charitable. Now, does that mean that I always have to walk around like Brother Anwar now? He's worried, even though he's very generous. He's like, Jana, I don't have enough money to, like, every single second. I'm a student, right? You know, I'm going to nursing school. You know, I want to graduate. You know, How am I going to every single second, what am I like dispensing money all the time? Right? No, you can be charitable with a simple smile. And you already do that, right? Those who know Brother Anwar, they know that he's always smiling, he's always charitable in his ethics, right? And how he is with others. Right? This is the state of being charitable. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has a beautiful narration. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
He says, al-ibtisamatu sadaqah. A smile is sadaqah. He says, al-kalimatu tayyibah, a nice word, is sadaqah. It's a form of charity. So that means that I have to make myself used to saying good things, to saying the good words, right? To be charitable with my words to others. Sometimes being charitable always can mean just being silent. Because if I were to say something, if I break my silence, then that silence could literally be like a double-edged, it's a double-edged sword, right? But it literally, if I break my silence, it's not going to be double-edged. Afwan, it's going to be single-edged, and it's going to be coming down, it's going to be ripping the person apart, and it's just not worth it. I become charitable by not saying anything in such a situation. Walking out, making a scene and walking out, that's not being charitable. Right? Prodding someone when it's a stressful situation to rile them up is not a charitable behavior. Right? So my goal is to be charitable. Now, to be in the presence of Allah, to be in a state of being fa'il, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ, I have to always be aware of Allah's presence. Now, Hajjatala, even though she's perfected the state of being, in a state of the presence of Allah, right? Others like the poor humble soul in front of you, right? Always slips. I always slip, right? My wife will tell you, I can't believe you said that. You know what? What is wrong with me? Why am I not I'm in the presence of Allah all the time. Why am I so weak? Why am I so heedless? Why do I forget? I realize that the key to it is literally that diligence in monitoring myself. Okay? I realize that I slip, but it worries me that I slip. But does that mean that I'm done? Am I done for just because I slipped once, twice, or three times? A man goes up to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salamullahi alayhi, one of his companions. This narration is mentioned in the book of Al-Kafi, and specifically about the forgetfulness and ghafla. So he asks the Imam, he says, when we are with you, we remember righteousness and we act righteously. But as soon as we leave you, we fall into heedlessness. He said, as long as you realize that you fall into heedlessness and you correct it, then you will still be considered of the mu'min. Which means, though, even though I act high and mighty and I'm, I've got my amama on and I've got, my official garb on, and when everybody sees me, they think the amama is like a halo, I'm a human like everybody else. And I make mistakes like everybody else. And I slip like everybody else, right? And I'm worried when I do. But I realize that Allah is all merciful. And as soon as I catch myself, or a wonderful brother or sister like yourselves reminds me and tells me, you know what? You did this the other day. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that it was appropriate? Or I did this, you self-project, you say, I did this the other day. What do you think of it? Do you think it was right for me to do it? How should I fix it? And in reality, even though it's a white lie that you did that, because you're trying to help me come close to righteousness, that's okay. If you make it a hypothetical, even better. If a person was to do this, how would they be able to solve this problem? Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salamullah alayhi, at the end of the book of Kafi, there's this beautiful hadith. A person comes to the Imam, he's a companion. He says to him, Yabna Rasulillah, O son of the Messenger of Allah, Wallahi inni la uhibbuk. I swear by Allah that I love you. The Imam, he then says to him, and how do you feel about me? He said, Undur ma fi qalbik. Says, look at what is within your heart, and you will know how I feel about you. This is a beautiful explanation of a hadith by, I believe, Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. We say it all the time. In Arabic, we say it all the time. We say, Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. That a believer is a reflection of another believer. So if I have nothing but love for brother Alex, right, then literally, this is called, in psychology, it actually exists. Those who listened to that lecture last year that I gave about transmodal communication that occurs, neuronal transmodal communication that occurs between people, even people that don't know each other. There are certain, there's a certain way of us communicating through our body language, through pheromones, through, all of these different ways that don't require talk, that Allah gives us that we don't realize. Where, for example, you could be sitting with someone talking and you look at them, they look at you, and you know exactly what the other person is thinking, right? Right? We all know that feeling. We've all gone through that. This is the transmodal transfer of information, even though, you say, oh, see, eye to eye, and we understand each other. Or when, for example, you finish the sentences of your friend, or your mother, or your father, or your husband, or your wife, right? Why does that happen? How does that happen? It happens because of this transmodal transference and how often you do it. You become a reflection of that person. I mentioned there are two friends that I used to have. We don't look anything alike, in my opinion. I don't think we look anything alike. But because of how we act, people always say, for example, Hajj Wissam and I, we don't look alike. Hajj Wissam is very handsome, mashallah, okay? He's fit and stuff. And I'm nowhere near that, mashallah, beauty. But we used to hang out a lot with each other, okay? So I remember it was me, him, and another brother, may Allah bless him. And when we weren't together, people would say to me, where's your brother? If we're not together, where's your missing brother? Where's not in an Islamic way where they're saying your brother in Islam. Literally, they thought we were brothers. Because not only were we together all the time, not only did we talk the same way, but to people, because we talk the same way, because we walk the same way, even though we're different personalities, different characters, each of us has a different weakness and a different strength, right? But these people, most people, when they saw us together, they thought literally we were blood brothers. So that tells you exactly what psychology, modern psychology tells you. If you go back to that lecture I gave last year at the NYC, it's online, and you'll see that our perception is really changed based on, all of these phenomena that occur. You might have heard me mention in a past series how Imam Ali salamullah alayhi, he connects your basar with your basira. That if your basira is fasid, is corrupt, meaning your insight is corrupt, then your basar won't do you any good. Because you're only going to see things based on that corrupt perception. But if your perception is good and truthful, then your perception, what you see, you will see in a good, positive way. So when people, and what that does is that literally transposes an image that is positive. So when I say good words, and I'm with Brother Anwar, and we're very, very similar in how we talk and how we walk and the things that interest us. And Hajj Alex, he comes and he joins us, right? And Sister Tala and Sister Malek, join us. They're going to say, you guys are one family, right? You're going to say, how's your sister, Sister Melek? How's your sister, Hajjatala, right? How's your brother, Hajj Alex? Why? Because we're a reflection of each other, right? We become a reflection of each other. And that's why Prophet Muhammad said, مَثَلُ الْمُؤْمِنِ كَجَسَدٍ وَاحِدٍ, that the likeness of the believers is as though they are one body. Think about it. When we're always reflecting the same ideas, the same beliefs, right? The same sense of awe and God consciousness, that becomes something that we do regularly. What ends up happening, Sister Jenna, is we become a reflection of that very truth, right? So Prophet Muhammad is known to have said, reported to have said, or Afwan, Amir al-Mu'mineen, even though he learned it from Prophet Muhammad, but Amir al-Mu'mineen said it. He said, glad tidings to the person whom, when people are with him, or when he's around, when he's still alive, and he's not with his companions or with people, that people long for him and miss him. And if he were to die, that people would cry for him or her, which tells you that there's a connection. There's like this spiritual connection, just like the Imam Salamullahi alayhi said to his companion, "Undur ma fi qalbik." Look at what is within your heart. So we go back to the whole issue of abid and fa'il. So if we're all in a state of God consciousness, we become that fa'il, that person who's always doing, whether it's khushu', we become khasha', right? Whether it's zakat, we become fa'ilun of zakat. Whether it's salat, afwan, whether it's our promises, right? We are keepers of our promises. Wa'id, a person who's wa'id, right, is a person who always promises people to do things, and he's always the person who makes sure that he fulfills his promises. So he becomes sadiq. Ya sadiq al-wa'd. Right? Prophet Muhammad was known as a sadiq al-amin. Why? Because he was known to be always truthful, right? Always doing. And then in the Mu'minun, the part I want to get to is in verse 9. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. Now what's interesting here is Allah uses the word hafiz, which is in the form of fa'il again. Okay? Remove the waw nun at the end, so we get the singular form. Hafiz, which comes from the singular hafadha, okay, which means to keep something, or to memorize something, or to protect something. Okay? So hafidhun means that they are always in the state of protecting, maintaining, ensuring that they're doing their salah on time. Okay? So in order for me to be abid, just like my imams who are وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدِينَ, right? And to us they were the best of worshippers, always worshiping. Then I have to be, just like in the chapter of Al-Mu'minun, right? I have to be khashi' in my prayer. I have to be aarid, meaning mu'rid, meaning staying away from laghu, right? And then I have to be for my zakat fa'ilun, always doing the zakat, the charity. And then for my لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ, they're always maintaining chastity. And then الَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ, that I'm always ensuring that I'm taking care of my promises, that I'm fulfilling them. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ, meaning that for my prayer, always make sure that I ensure that إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا, that I pray on time and everything is scheduled around my prayer. Not everything is scheduled, not prayer is scheduled around everything else. That's how I'm going to be abid, right? So how do I become an abid? Right? How do I become an abid? Through my being abid continuously, following the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have become in a state of self-imposed enchainment to Allah's will. Can you handle that?
Sheikh, what was the word you said? To Allah's will?
Self-imposed enchainment to Allah. To Allah's will.
Enchain, okay.
Let me give you an example. So let's say, for example, I have in class, let's take a simple example, in class. A person who's considered a teacher's pet. What do they do that they gain this wonderful title? Sister Jenna, we never hear from you. Let's hear from you. We hear from you every now and then.
They ask a lot of questions and basically they have their hands up right away. They stay after class, stuff like that.
And it's almost like there's like this self-imposed connection to the teacher, right? The teacher tells them to, like, for example, you saw, for example, Sheikh Ali Abu Khudr when he was with us, right? Once you see he fills the blanks for me. He completes my sentences sometimes. He gives you a new idea or another hadith, right? When I leave, I say, Sheikh Ali, discuss with them. Correct? Right? There's this sense of connection that occurs between a teacher and his student if the student is a diligent student, is a student that wants to learn. We connect our learning with our teacher, right? If I value the teacher, I value the information that's coming from them. Therefore, I value the teacher and I believe that what they're going to give me is beneficial. Let me give you another example. What is something that you can't do without, that you feel like if you don't have it, right, you would be at a loss?
Sheikh,
You'd be at a total loss. You'd feel like you're just lost. Brother Anwar.
I'd have to say it's my phone, because I have like my calendar and my to-do lists and everything I need to do for the day.
That's such a great example. Such a great example. Jazakallah. Right? Anybody else? Anything else? What do you feel like enslaved to that you can't do without? I remember watching this one show once in the days of Jahiliyyah when I wasn't a sheikh. Okay, I watched a movie, I think, and there was this girl where she was known to always like wear makeup, right? And I remember I think she didn't have her makeup or something like that, and she said, "I can't be me without my makeup," right? I can't be me without my makeup. Like she needs to make up her face so that people see a different face than what she actually looks like. So she can't be her without her makeup. So she was enslaved, right, to her makeup, right? Brother Anwar is enslaved to his phone. And this is a psychological and modern dilemma, right? That's created literally by the tech industry, that you can't do without your phone. You literally, without your phone, you'd be lost. Before, we would have our calendars and we'd write everything on paper. Now, as soon as your phone dies, if you didn't charge it the night before, the next day is shot. I don't care what you tell me, right? What about being enslaved to social media, to who checks your profile, to the number of followers you have on Instagram, or the number of likes you get on Facebook, or the number of shares you get, right? How enslaved do you feel if you don't check your social media, right? Do you feel a void? Sister Melek is on top of things. He's like, nah, I got this down. No problem is there.
So actually, like, I used to feel like I always have to check my phone. And then I kind of noticed that, especially in the beginning of Shahr Ramadan, I would honestly wake up and spend about an hour just looking at food videos, and the number of food bloggers that I was following like increased exponentially. But then I felt like I was wasting a lot of time, and like, being Shahr Ramadan, like I could have read an entire juz of Qur'an, but I was just watching food videos. So I turned off all of my notifications so that I avoid like, because that was kind of like what prompted me, like, oh, this person sent you a message, and so like I wanted to respond, but then like that would take an hour. Um, and so honestly, right now, like I'm kind of in the same boat as Brother Anwar, but also not, because I have everything on my phone, like everyone's number, like my calendar, although I still have a physical calendar too. um, so I need it in order to be able to do, like, track my study schedule and all that stuff. But at the same time, I try to make it a point, like when I go talk to like my dad or my mom or someone, to leave my phone in my room, because I noticed that while I was talking to them, I was checking my phone. Like I was kind of becoming addicted. So I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle of both worlds right now, trying to
So
make
you've
sense of
removed
it.
some chains. So you're admitting, you're saying, I wasn't chained.
Yeah.
I've removed some chains, right? I've removed some chains by choice, but I realize that there are other chains that are imposed, like my school schedule, my coursework, stuff like that. I do have to still connect with that. But you do realize you were enslaved to your phone, and that this is a phenomenon that modern psychology has uncovered, that because the notifications, whether it's the ding, the bell that we hear, or whether it's even, when the light goes off on your phone, right? The blue light versus the green light versus the red light, right? Now it's visual versus hearing. They're using both, right? That you have a notification, or when you, for example, turn your phone on, right? Or you look at the time, you have the visual notifications on as opposed to the sound and the light going off, right? And so you're like, swipe. Oh no, I did it again, right? That just happened to me the other day, right? So we realize then that psychologically we are enchained to certain things, right? We're enchained to our phone. Yes, that's a great example, right? What else, Sister Isra? Did you want to share something? What are you enchained to?
I clicked the wrong one. Sorry. Salam Sheikhna. So I would say that social media a little bit. It's not so much as I go in and I check like, who's seeing what. I use social media like to push out content, whether that be poetry or just like, a reflection that I'm thinking about at the moment. But I tend to do it a lot, and because I have a really bad memory too. So if I have a reflection or like an idea for poetry and I don't have anything to write it down like immediately, I try to go ahead and like just push it out. That way I don't lose it. But sometimes it'll get like excessive. So like at the end of the night, I'll go back and I'll like look at like my Instagram story, for example, and I'll have like multiple things up, and I'm like, okay, this is too much. Like I was on here way too much today, content or not. Like I can be writing these things down and trying to figure out a schedule, when to post, but I got too much. So like even this Ramadan, I had Twitter as well as Instagram, and I shut my Twitter. I was like, I don't need to be spending time on this. It's too much. I'm over it. I can limit to one social media account.
I like how when you started out, you said you did this. You have a tell. Okay, when you're not convinced of what you're saying, you say a little bit. And now what you just described was totally opposite to a little bit, right? So, but it's you're right. And this is an issue for content creators. Like I found myself, for example, this year starting to create content as opposed to depending on others to push out whatever lectures that I'm recording, because I had Al-Ain wanted me to record the first series, and working with them and with a few other sponsors to actually create, to record all of these series and place them online now, so creating that content. Like I'd go to my son and I'd say to him, how did it do? Where are we? How many views? Why don't we have enough subscribers? And I'm going in and what ends up happening, even though I know I have a specific audience for that, a specific group that's in Toronto that I'm giving them lectures, but I'm thinking, I keep checking. It's like, what? Hey, what are you checking for? Until you push it out, you're looking for the long term, and it sucks you in, right? And you feel like you're enchained. It literally, you feel enslaved to it even, right? You can't not look. What are you going to do? Ignore your phone, So it is a problem. Yeah, it is. You become enslaved to it. And that's something that's really important to admit to, I feel like now we're in a what do they call them? Those groups, those the
anonymous
therapy
group?
groups. Yeah, I feel like we're like, you know, this is good therapy. For me, it's good therapy. Okay, who else would like to share? Anybody else? What are you enchained to?
If I can give another example, I just came to my head. I don't think this is backbiting. My sister, she sleeps a lot, and she says, I need my sleep. Like since she was young, she needs over I think 10 hours to be satisfied, because she's like a nurse and she works really hard. She's moving throughout the day. So she's like, when I sleep, khalas. Like I need to be sleeping at this time. So I guess she's like, I don't know if that would fit the situation, that she needs to have the 10 hours and if she doesn't, then I don't know if that's like this applies here, but maybe coffee.
I think it would be tough to make that judgment just because she is a nurse and nurses do work a lot of hours, you know, and you tend to find out what works for you in terms of sleep, you know, where you can function properly, especially in like critical jobs, like in the medical profession. Like I know my dad's a physician. I mean, he could go on, and he was a surgeon, so his surgeries sometimes last 8, 9. I remember one surgery, it lasted 11 hours for him to do. You know, so somebody like that, they need their sleep. And we know in the medical profession, most of them are sleep deprived, right? So that is an issue. But I think we'll leave it for her to speak for herself about what enchains her. Okay, so let's hear what's Hajjah Tala says. What enchains you, Hajjah?
Man, this is hard. I definitely my phone, similar to everyone else. I feel like that's like the one thing in today's society that everyone just has with them. It reminds me of there's a story that Sayyid Muhammad Baqir always says, like there is this family, they went to pray Jama'ah together, and one of the girls is always on her phone. So the dad goes, why don't you do your sajda on your iPhone today? Like, you know, do it on the iPhone. That's who like you're praying to, you know? So like that reminder, I like remembered it earlier today. So it's definitely true. I feel like even when I'm going to pray, sometimes I like pick up my phone to check a message first or something like that. So that's definitely, I think, one of the weaker points, especially for people our age in our society.
You know, I got these, my kids, they don't have phones except for my son, Ali. And the reason why is because he goes out and gets groceries for us. So we want to be able to like communicate with him. So this year I gave him a phone to use. But then when he comes back home, he just leaves it on the desk, on my desk. So what I noticed though is when it's time for dua, like I bought them last year, the year before, or a few years back actually, I bought them Mafatih al-Jinan. Each one has their own one from the shrine of Imam Ali. Okay, so this year when they came, they didn't bring the copy with them. Each has a copy of their Quran. They bring it with them. First it was a big one, so they left it over there. Then I got them the next year, I got them a smaller one because we read Quran all the time. Like after Salah, we're always reading Quran. And then they decided to leave it in Michigan this time. So this year they're like, you know, we'll just go off the Android device and the phone and stuff like that. So what's interesting is, since you mentioned this, is between Salah, we're doing the dua, but what are we doing? We're checking, you know, we're using the phone, the Mafatih al-Jinan on the phone, the Quran on the phone, right? So, and it doesn't have that same organic feeling, you know, that smell of paper, even though I know it's bad, right? Yeah, I mean, you need to save the trees. But at the end of the road, the book doesn't give you a notification, right? It doesn't distract you, right, Sister Jenna? A book, you know, it doesn't distract you. So what I did was, I noticed myself the other day, as I was, my son was like in the morning, he's like, hey, Baba, could you pull out, you know, the dua, because my phone is dead. I said, okay. So as I was pulling it out, I noticed the notifications, and I went to the notifications and I was distracted, you know, and he's like, Baba, the dua. I said, oh yeah, you know what? I forgot. I got distracted. I saw a notification, because I get a lot of questions, and I feel guilty when I don't answer, even though, you know, some of the scholars have, you know, from my teachers, what they do is they give an hour during the day specifically to answering questions. But I find that that's hard to do with the difference in time, especially between us and in North America. But anyway, so yeah, so I totally relate to that. You know, that does happen, happens a lot. Okay, Sister Fatima, what enchains you?
There are two Fatmas talking to me.
Yes,
I guess.
just Sister Fatima, not Sister Fatima Musa.
Oh, okay. Well, alhamdulillah, I don't have the problem with my phone since a few years ago. So I've gotten that down. And I can say maybe school or schoolwork. Now that my finals are over, I find myself rereading old chapters and asking my friends if they need help with school because I have nothing better to do. But I guess, yeah,
Wow.
schoolwork. I just always need to be
Bismillah. I wish I was more like you. You're going to be my new idol.
No.
You are totally chain free.
I guess. Thank you. I don't think I am. I don't think it's a good thing. I mean, it could be a good thing, but I mean, I should be focusing more on, since my finals are over, I should be focusing more on like Shahr Ramadan and Amal.
I see.
Yeah.
So now your keenness to study and to help others, you feel is enchaining you, preventing you from, let's say, doing certain a'mal or focusing more on your relationship with Allah. I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so that's a good way. And what I want you to notice something is what's happening here is that what we're doing most over and over and over repetitively is literally what we're enchained to. That's
Right.
the whole point of asking you, you know, what enchains you, right? Okay, so Sister Nadine, what enchains you?
It was something Anwar touched on earlier, but I realized that I was gonna mention it too, is it's sleep, especially like with it being quarantine, so there's like no limit on the time day anymore.
You're making up your sleep time from when you were born until today.
But I feel like it was also an issue before where I had to get my 8 hours, and I like if I didn't get 8 hours for whatever reason, I'd end up missing my first class. So that's always been like a struggle for me. But I don't like to overindulge, but like I am very attached to my sleep. It's hard to like I have to get my 8 hours.
Okay, so you feel enchained. You feel enchained to your sleep. Yes, who has a question? Sister Malik.
I'm so sorry. Would that really count as being enchained to something? Because like it's a basic necessity and like that helps you, you know, cognitively function better. And it's kind of like saying I'm enchained to eating. Like, okay, I'm not eating the entire
you can be enchained to
fridge.
eating.
Well, yeah, well, like you know, like I'm saying, you know, I need my 3 meals of the day, but not obviously there's some people that overdo it, but like, you know, if you're just saying like to me, I have to eat, you know, 3 meals a day versus like my mom who eats 2 meals a day. Is that really being enchained, or is that just kind of figuring out what works for you and what doesn't?
Yeah, so that's what I was mentioning. That's what I was mentioning earlier too to Brother Anwar. That when he mentioned his sister, that it could be that each person has figured out what hours of sleep they need to be able to function, especially in critical work. But I think anyway, sleep is critical without a doubt. But I think you know yourself, each person knows themselves, and you know when too much is too much. So if you're consistently sleeping too much, you know, they say the only reason why a person gets tired other than work, okay, is either if they sleep too little or they sleep too much, right? You know, when you oversleep, you're just as tired and groggy and foggy as if you don't sleep enough, right? Am I right? Yeah. Okay, so who do we have next? Sister Nadine, are you done or did you want to add something?
No, you pretty much covered it. Like when you kind of know like when it's enough. Like when I was working in school, it wasn't really indulging, but when it's quarantine, it kind of is.
Okay. Sister Fatma Musa. Sister Fatma Musa is thumbs up. See, either thumbs up, I'm enchained, or thumbs up, I'm totally unenchained. Which one is it? Right? Okay, so blink once if it's, if it's, I mean, give me a thumbs up if you're enchained. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're not enchained. Okay, good. Asmallah, mashallah. Good for you. Okay. So, Brother Ahmed, what enchains you?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum
How are you
salam.
doing, man?
Alhamdulillah. Allah khair.
I suppose this is something that a lot of other people can relate to as well, and it also has to do with phones. I would say passive consumption. When I say that, I mean like passive consumption of media, whether it be like YouTube or Netflix or social media.
Sure.
It's just like whether it be like the dopamine or anticipation of social media, or like, you know, just like passively watching a show or something that doesn't really have any benefits or doesn't really get you closer to your goals. So I think that's like one of like the weaknesses, I suppose, of being part of the generation of phones and such, because like people back then, like their hobbies, it wasn't so easy to find something to waste time on it, like so easily, because it's so accessible now. It's so accessible now. Like even back then, at least people would spend time on like if people were to spend a lot of time, they would be, you know, some people might read instead, and even reading is more engaging, even though you can spend a lot of time on it. So I would say passive consumption is a big chain for me.
So passive consumption of media, that's a good one, but still related to your mobile phone. Is it the same when you're on your laptop, or just your mobile phone is the main source?
Definitely more potent on the mobile phone, just because the mobile phone is much more accessible. It's where you build the habit stronger.
Yeah, very true. Ahsan. Sister Aya, what enchains you?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So for me, I think it would be just like Nadine, and I don't know who else mentioned it before, but just like constantly sleeping throughout the day, because waiting for iftar, and then once iftar comes, I'm awake all night, so it really messes up the sleep schedule.
I think he froze.
I was gonna say, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
He might have lost internet.
Yeah, we heard what you said.
Still shows he's in here though, but I don't know. No, now he's out.
Does he still have a class at 12?
I think he forgot.
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he just lagged out. He should be coming in. There he is.
You're on mute, Sheikh.
Definitely, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I guess my son's phone died, so I had to switch to my phone's internet. So sorry about that. Sorry, Sister Aya. I'm so sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
No, you're totally fine.
Can you repeat?
It's okay. Yeah, so I was just basically saying that I have the same problem as Nadine and whoever said it before, but just constantly sleeping. And of course, I'll be awake at night and reading Qur'an, watching lectures and everything. But in the daytime, I feel like it goes by so quickly because I'm sleeping all day. And I can't help it because I'm awake all night. So I don't know how to really fix that problem yet.
Okay, well, the good news is that in the month of Ramadan, your sleep is worship. Okay? So,
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, right? But beyond the month of Ramadan, right now, you know, inshallah, beyond the month of Ramadan, you pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fix your sleep. All right? So I'm wondering, before the month of Ramadan, what it was like for you. Was it the same?
No. Before it was constantly work and school, so I didn't have a choice. But I just feel very unproductive right now in the daytime. And usually, you know, you have coffee and stuff to keep you awake, but I'm happy. I'm off the coffee now, and I'm trying not to be attached to anything. So not being attached to coffee is good for me. It's fine.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. So you were enchained by coffee at one point. You're free thanks to the month of Ramadan. Now you just have to fix your sleep cycle. So I think come back to me in 10 days, after Eid. Let's check up and see if your sleep is doing well or not. After that, I'll give you a prescription. Inshallah, that'll work for you. If it's a problem, a week after Eid. A week after Eid, come back to me. Okay, not right after
All right.
Eid. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so then that means then something that we do repetitively, becomes habitual for us. And that habit, that establishment of a habit then becomes something that enchains us. Okay. And all habits form within, let's say, two or three processes. Okay. The first process is something that is ingrained when I'm younger. It's ingrained in me when I'm younger. Okay. Now this ingrainment of something within me when I'm younger, that occurs also as a result of a repetitive behavior that I saw, not necessarily that I did, but a repetitive behavior that someone who I look up to or someone who was around me did. Okay. So that is not necessarily something that I had a choice in. Okay. The second type is the type where, no, I had a choice in it. Okay. And I kept on doing it. Like, for example, my salt and vinegar chips addiction, for example. If you know me, you know I love salt and vinegar chips. I've mentioned it on the podium before, right? So I realized it's a choice. So I made a choice not to walk down the chips aisle, okay? It was hard. It took me a few tries, a few months, but finally, alhamdulillah, I don't have that problem, which means that avoiding the trigger is really what's going to help you as well. Okay. I tried, for example, using the excuse that I'm buying them for my kids. This is, of course, when I was in Michigan living next to the dollar store, all right? That I'm buying them for my kids, and then they'd be in the pantry, and next thing you know, the smell causes your mouth to water, right? The crunch makes your mouth water, and you realize you're still enchained. When you do what? When you're thinking about sneaking into the pantry when nobody's looking. Right? So deep down inside, yes, you made the decision, but it's still not solidified. Why? Because you still have a behavioral pattern, and you still want that dopamine hit that Brother Ahmed was talking about. So, but the second is a choice. It's still a choice, right? And that has to do with something that is more physical. Again, it's still a repetitive behavior, though, that has become habitual, that you need to break, again, by removing yourself from that trigger. The first habitual behavior that you have that was ingrained in you, first you have to come to that realization that it's a negative that was ingrained in you. But at the end of the road, you literally became enchained to that behavioral pattern, whether you know it or not. And so it's important to self-actualize and go back within yourself and realize, why you do this, why you snap really quickly, why you're overreactive, for example, why certain things bug you more than others, right? Why you recite a certain way. You know how, for example, when we were kids, we go to the Islamic school on Saturday or Sunday and we learn how to recite, let's say, okay? But we all recite specifically as they taught us. So even if we wanted to break out of that and recite like one of the great reciters, we can't. We end up reverting back to that same rhythm. That's something I've been working on with my son, right? And I realized that that's the reason why. So which means that the only way to resolve this issue is to repeat something new over and over again, and to make it, to reach the level of fa'il, of doing this, right? Over and over. So that I'm not enchained, imprisoned, enslaved to my phone or to my negative pattern of behavior, okay? So I mentioned three things, right? I honestly don't remember the third thing right now. It'll come to me. But the main thing is this, when it comes to this issue of abd and abid. If I become enslaved to something, right? Enslaved to my phone, enslaved to my social media, enslaved to a behavioral pattern, okay? It means I'm enchained to it. I'm enslaved to this behavior, to this habitual behavior. And now I am officially a slave. But a slave in some cases by choice, in other cases not by choice. Not by choice in those pattern of behaviors that were ingrained in me. When I become older and I realize them, it does become a choice if I don't change them. Okay? It does become a choice. And then when I'm older, those things that I do realize, that are bad behaviors that I do, whether it's overeating or oversleeping or over talking, right? I become enslaved to that. I become a slave of it, okay? And that's what it means to be a slave to something, to be enchained by something. So the question is, would I rather be enslaved to Allah or be enslaved to materialistic things and needs? So when he says, and you say, this is a very long way of explaining abduka, right? But to understand the depths of what it means to be Abdullah, right? That's what it means, that I choose that everything that I do, every decision that I make, every direction that I walk, every direction that I look, everything that I hear, I only see Allah before it, after it, and within it. Every decision that I make, I'm enslaved to saying, oh Allah, what is it that would please you first and foremost? It becomes habitual, right? That when I give in charity, I don't give for myself, I give for the sake of Allah. When I say a kind word, I don't say it for myself. The reflection is that it reflects well on me. But at the end of the road, I do it to please Allah, right? I might tolerate someone, not because of them. I tolerate them because I'm in the presence of Allah. And how does a servant or a slave act before his master? Right? Like when you're in school and the principal walks down the hall, or the dean walks down the hall, how would you act? Would you raise your voice and laugh and cackle and do all of this sort of stuff? And no, right? You're on your best behavior, right? And this is exactly what it means to be abd, that you're enslaved to that. You're basically, hate to break it to you, if you're tied to your phone, you're worshiping your phone. If you're tied to your sleep, too tied to your sleep, overindulging, then you're worshiping your sleep. You're enslaved to that thing that you are continuously, repetitively doing. So what Allah tells me here when He says fa'ilun, khashi'un, ra'in, meaning ra'un, li'amanatihim ra'un, that they always take care of their trusts and their promises, that my goal is to repeat a good, positive behavior that enslaves me to Allah as opposed to enslaving me to the physical, materialistic world. And by doing so, what happens is I become Abdullah. Just like Prophet Muhammad, Abduka wa Rasuluk. I become also Abduka, right, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I do it by being Abid, by continuously doing acts of worship, by saying a kind word, an act of worship. And if we look at the right of the tongue, or the right of the hearing, or the right of the eyesight, for those who didn't attend that series, I think that's available online from last year or the year before. Those lectures are available. I will be reshooting them and posting them on YouTube as content, but that won't be until after the month of Ramadan, inshallah. So I think that then understanding that Allah, He's broken the code. I mean, only recently, humans have broken that code. But 1400 years ago, Allah has made it clear in the Holy Qur'an, right? And of course, way before that, right? Way before that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this, and He gave it to His prophets, and we received it in the Holy Qur'an. And we see it. We see it physically, we see it, we feel it, right? And we read about it in psychology. And now we know that in order for me to be abd, a slave, it's not a bad thing to be a slave. It's bad to be a slave to something materialistic. It's bad to be a slave to anyone other than Allah. Right? So I proudly say, my goal is to be a slave to Allah. I don't feel I'm 100% there though. I don't know about you. I'm sure you're all much better than me. But that's what my goal is. If I'm looking at my notifications too much and it's distracting me, my goal is to remove the distractions. Not necessarily not create content, Sister Isra. It's good, create content, but don't be enslaved to it. And nobody else knows. People around you, they'll see you glimpsing, every few seconds, right? And they'll know you're hooked and addicted. But The end of the road, pushing it out there, not for the sake of the notifications, your content, but pushing it out there, let's say to please Allah. Okay. There's a very, very fine line, and you know it. Nobody else knows it other than you. That if something started right for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, ensuring that it doesn't get corrupted by being a habitual behavior that is self-serving, as opposed to habitual behavior that serves Allah. And no one can determine that other than you. I know that for me too, you know, when I'm creating the content. That I wonder, like, am I doing it because I want people to watch so that they come closer to Allah, or because it makes me feel good that they're watching, right?
Intention can get skewed.
Yeah. So I think that it's important then, whether it's our relationship with our phone, and I hate to tell you, a relationship with the phone is like it's a one-sided relationship, and those never work out. And you can quote me, okay? Does anybody have any questions or anything to add? Even though we only focused on abdika, but I want you to, I mean, look, there's so much more to say just about that one word, okay? But I thought it's important to, because it's relevant, right? It's really relevant to understand what that means. Anybody have anything to add before we finish, inshallah? So it goes back to that very first reason that I mentioned to you, that it's either a behavioral pattern that was ingrained in you when you were a kid and you don't realize it, or it's a behavior that you developed by choice, such as using our phones, right? Or it was a behavior that you developed not by choice, okay? So for example, with that's the third one I told you, I tell you, and I forgot. So that's where, you did make the choice to use your phone, but you didn't realize that there was an algorithm behind it, behind using social media. You didn't realize that, you know, psychologists were being hired, you know, to help these mathematicians and computer scientists to evilly concoct a formula to keep you engaged, right? So how do you break that? The only thing to do is not necessarily to break your phone, you know, or to get one of those flip phones, those old Motorola flip phones, although that is a solution, right? But to definitely realize your own weakness first and foremost, you know, and you know, don't put the chips in your pantry, and convince yourself that you're not gonna check your notifications or open the bag and smell it, or convince somebody else to use it. Like what I was doing with my son was like, I'm not gonna check the notifications. Ali, could you see if anybody called me? Could you see if you know? Realizing your weakness and doing something similar to what Sister Malak did, which is, you know, and I think that's great. You know, when you go to talk to your parents, you know, put your phone in your room, although you will hear it ring and you will kind of get antsy. I actually suggest shutting your phone off, to be honest with you. I literally will shut my phone off during certain times of the day, just because I know, like when I'm writing, if I'm working on, you know, a lecture or I'm doing something like that, I will literally shut off my phone. Even though I noticed something, and I told my wife this year, I would actually get on my computer and start typing. And I have this program called Telegram, which is similar to WhatsApp. And I have the desktop application. So I noticed every time I get a notification, I get distracted on that program. So basically, I decided not to turn it on at all. And what I was doing was, because we're so attached to our mobile phones, you want to be able to use your mobile phone for everything. So I was doing my lectures, I was typing them out on my phone. You know, if I was writing poetry, I'd do it on my phone. If I was, you know, checking my emails, I'd be doing it on my phone. If I was sending out emails, even design, if I was working on any designs or reviewing, you know, projects or something like that, I do it on my phone. So I realized when I was sitting there and I was trying to type out one of the lectures because I'm turning all these lectures into books. So whatever series I'm giving, you know, I'm turning it into a book. Okay, so I realized I got so used to writing my lectures on my phone that now I couldn't write a lecture on my computer anymore. And when I'm on my phone, I don't know how to shut up. I don't know how to shut down an application, literally make it shut up. How to shut down an application without it giving me notifications. I still haven't figured that out. There's not a problem with working on the phone to actually write something. But the problem is that all of the notifications you get in between, is exactly like putting the bag of chips in my pantry. So now I'm reprogramming myself, to just take a specific time before the month of Ramadan. That's what I was doing, that I would just shut everything down, just my laptop, and I would sit in half-hour increments or 1 hour increments and work on what I need to work on without any distraction at all. And isolating myself, creating a nook for myself, and just isolating myself from the family to be able to focus. And then, of course, giving family time and giving, that when you're with your family, leave your phone aside. I noticed myself, for example, because of we're working, like my team of content producers include my family, include my kids. So that's what we'd be talking about, over, if we're eating or we're, over iftar or something like that. And I said, listen, let's not talk about it. We'll set up a meeting. We'll set up a meeting after. We'll take an hour. We'll talk about everything that you want to talk about. But right now, let's just enjoy each other's company and focus on what we need to focus on. And I think that is the tough part, to be able to make the active choice and then to continue to do it. So that I'm fa'al, right? Continue to do it consistently. Imam Ali, he gives us the formula. He says, to break that code, he says, look, قَلِيلٌ مَدُومٌ عَلَيْهِ أَرْجَى مِنْ كَثِيرٍ مَمْنُونٍ. This is in his short sayings in Nahj al-Balagha. He says, if you do a little, but you do it consistently, that's what we want from you. Not to do a lot that ends up becoming too much for you, like a boot camping it, and then you end up just leaving it. So it's like binging, and then you end up not doing it consistently. The consistency is the key, okay, to becoming fa'il, to becoming abid, and therefore becoming abd, right? هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي يا ربي على سيدنا محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات الله وسلامه.
اللهم صل على محمد.
Sheikhna, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Allah
Sheikh.
bless you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Keep us in your dua.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, hopefully tomorrow. The internet was inconsistent today because we're right next to the shrine. So usually I'm at the house. It's not that inconsistent, but we'll see what the excuse will be tomorrow. Inshallah, I don't become always late, fa'il of lateness. So I'm going to work on that, I promise you.
If there's any excuse, so that's a pretty good excuse, being right next to the shrine.
Yeah. So alhamdulillah. All right. Keep us in your dua. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll talk. Ma salam.
Likewise, Sheikhna. Assalamu alaikum.
Ma salam.